Before we dive into this case, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment, because once you hear what happened on that cold November night, you'll realize some mysteries don't wait for anyone. The sirens were the first thing neighbors remembered. Not the screams. Not the confusion. Just sirens, a long, slicing wail ripping through the quiet streets of Brookdale Heights at 2:14 a.m. The kind of sound that told everyone something had gone terribly, unusually wrong. Detective Sarah Nolan stepped out of her unmarked car and felt the chill crawl up her spine. The house at the end of the cul-de-sac glowed in a pale, eerie blue from the emergency lights. Officers were already moving in and out, faces tight with urgency. It looked like the aftermath of a break-in, but the atmosphere told her this was something deeper. The victim was a 29-year-old financial analyst named Ethan Reeves, reported missing just hours earlier by his sister after he failed to answer a string of late-night phone calls. Ethan wasn't the type to disappear. He was predictable, obsessively so. That detail alone made Sarah's instincts sharpen. Inside the house, nothing looked ransacked. Instead, it looked frozen. A half-made cup of coffee sat on the counter. A jacket hung neatly on a dining chair. Ethan's phone lay face down on the kitchen tile, screen cracked, as if it had been dropped mid-step. But the strangest part was the voicemail. One officer handed Sarah the phone and whispered, "You need to hear this." The message was time-stamped 1:59 a.m., exactly 15 minutes before the first 911 call. Ethan's voice was hushed, shaky, almost swallowed by fear. "If something happens to me, don't trust." The message cut off. Abruptly. Violently. Like someone had ended it for him. Sarah replayed it 3 times. The same chill swept through her each time. Don't trust who? As for where Ethan was now, no one knew. Officer Grant, a broad-shouldered veteran who'd seen his share of horrors, gestured toward the hallway. "We found something unusual," he muttered. The unusual was a trail. Tiny specks of dark, almost invisible under the soft white hallway light. Not enough to suggest violence, but enough to suggest someone had been hurt. The specks led to the back door, which was unlocked. The night outside was silent, as if it were holding its breath. Sarah crouched, touching the cold door handle. "He left willingly, or someone walked him out," she said softly. But 2 things didn't align: Ethan's calm, orderly home and that terrified voicemail. She needed answers, fast. Neighbors told officers they'd heard a man arguing with Ethan earlier that night. No one saw his face. No one could describe his car. All they remembered was a deep voice and a sense of urgency. And then there was the security footage. Ethan had a small camera above his front porch, nothing special, just the type used to monitor package deliveries. The footage loaded slowly, the timestamp blinking, 1:47 a.m. Ethan stepped outside, phone pressed to his ear, pacing anxiously. He looked over his shoulder multiple times. Something, or someone, had him scared. Then he paused, listening intently, as if the person on the line had just told him something life-altering. But then came the part that made Sarah's pulse quicken. A dark sedan rolled slowly into frame and stopped at the curb. Ethan froze. The driver's door opened slightly, not all the way, and Ethan suddenly backed up. His lips moved rapidly, either pleading or warning. And then the footage glitched. A flicker, a static crackle, and when the image returned, the sedan was gone. Ethan was gone. Only his phone lay on the porch, vibrating against the wooden boards. A perfect disappearance in less than 10 seconds. But something else caught Sarah's eye. Just before the footage cut, Ethan glanced sharply to his left, toward the streetlight. His expression wasn't fear. It wasn't desperation. It was recognition. He knew whoever was in that car. Sarah leaned back, rewinding the frame again and again, watching Ethan's eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the shock that crossed his face. She whispered to herself, he knew them, but he didn't trust them. That voicemail suddenly carried a heavier weight. "If something happens to me, don't trust." But trust who? A sudden shout echoed from the yard. Officer Grant's flashlight beam swung wildly across the grass before locking onto something half-buried near the fence line. "Detective, you need to see this." Sarah jogged over, breath quickening. Grant stepped aside, letting his beam settle on the object. It was Ethan's wallet, soaked, dirt-stained, and wedged into the soil as if someone had tried to hide it quickly. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what lay beneath it. A second phone. One Ethan's family didn't know about. And the last call on that phone was made just minutes before he vanished. To a contact saved under a single name. Home. Sarah stared at the screen, pulse pounding. Who was Ethan calling home at 1:59 a.m.? And why did he have a secret phone to do it? One thing was certain. This was no random disappearance. And the person on the other end of that last phone call was someone Ethan feared more than anyone else. The second phone felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried the weight of everything Ethan had been hiding. Detective Sarah Nolan held it carefully, studying the cracked black casing and the faint smear of dirt along the edges. Whoever dropped it hadn't meant to leave it behind. And whoever Ethan had called under the name home wasn't family. Sarah was sure of that. She turned to Officer Grant. Bag it. And get tech on standby. I want whatever's inside pulled before sunrise. Grant nodded, but Sarah could see the uneasiness in his eyes. This case was already turning into something much darker than a disappearance. Back at the station, the clock struck 4:03 a.m. The precinct hummed with the low mechanical buzz of printers, computer fans, and the occasional clatter of hurried footsteps. The kind of atmosphere that always showed up when investigators knew a case had potential to explode. Ethan's sister, Lena Reeves, sat anxiously in one of the small interview rooms. She looked nothing like her brother's precise, controlled demeanor. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling slightly. But when Sarah walked in, Lena lifted her head with a mix of desperation and determination. "Did you find him?" she asked immediately. "Not yet," Sarah said gently. "But we found something important." Lena swallowed. "Is he alive?" "We're working to make sure he is." Sarah sat down across from her. "Lena, did Ethan have a second phone? Something he kept hidden?" Lena shook her head instantly. "No. He wasn't like that. Ethan told me everything." Sarah didn't respond right away. She simply placed the second phone on the table. Lena stared at it like it was an object she'd never seen before. "Where did that come from?" Lena whispered. "Near the back fence of his house." Lena blinked hard, processing. Ethan wasn't in trouble. He didn't have enemies. He wasn't involved in anything. Sarah leaned in slightly. Then why did he call someone labeled home minutes before he disappeared? Lena's face twisted with confusion. "That's not our home number. He would never call someone else that." Sarah watched her carefully. "Lena, did Ethan have any financial issues? A suspicious client? A fight with anyone recently?" "No," Lena said, shaking her head hard. "He was stressed, yes. He was working late hours. He said there was something at his job he wasn't comfortable with. But he never told me what." Sarah's focus sharpened. "What kind of work did he do, exactly?" "He was a financial analyst. He reviewed company transactions, risk reports, compliance files. He said nothing dramatic ever happened. Just numbers and spreadsheets." Sarah frowned. Numbers and spreadsheets could hide a lot. Before she could press further, Officer Grant appeared at the doorway. "Detective. We got into the second phone." Sarah stood immediately. "Lena, stay here. I'll be right back." Grant led her to the tech lab, where a young forensic analyst named Avery spun his chair around, eyes wide. "You're gonna want to see this," he said. The screen displayed Ethan's call logs, but they didn't show what Sarah expected. Yes, the contact labeled home had been called minutes before Ethan vanished, but that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was the pattern. Every night for the last 2 weeks, Ethan had made the same exact call. Same time frame. Same contact. Same duration, always under a minute. And every call happened off the grid, with his main phone powered off. "What's the number?" Sarah asked. Avery hesitated. "That's the thing, the number is masked. It pings to a relay in Nevada. Then another in Utah. Then another one in Delaware. It's bouncing. Someone set it up that way on purpose." Sarah's pulse quickened. So the person he was calling didn't want to be found. Avery nodded. And that's not all. He clicked open a folder labeled Messages. Clean. Empty. No text threads. No data. No associations. But the voicemail folder had one file. One audio file received earlier the same night Ethan disappeared. Avery pressed play. The message was faint, distorted, run through an obvious scrambling filter. A man's voice broke through the static, low and deliberate. "You're out of time, Ethan. If you don't deliver it tonight, everything you care about goes with it." Sarah felt the air shift in the room. Deliver what? And who was threatening him? She replayed the message twice, processing every shadowy detail of the distorted voice. Grant crossed his arms. This wasn't random. He was in deep with something. Sarah nodded slowly. Someone was forcing his hand. And whatever he was supposed to deliver, he didn't. Avery cleared his throat. There's one more thing. The phone had a tracker, simple, but active. It logged locations for the last month. He clicked open a map filled with pinpoints. One address had been visited 6 times. An abandoned warehouse on Pierfield Industrial Road, on the outskirts of town. Sarah's eyes narrowed. He kept going back there. Why? Grant exhaled. Do you want a team? No, Sarah said. I'm going myself. Grant blinked. Alone? Someone made Ethan disappear tonight. If they know we're coming, they'll disappear too. She grabbed her coat, the weight of the mystery pressing against her ribs like a warning. But she didn't slow down. She didn't hesitate. Because if Ethan had gone to that warehouse 6 nights in a row, then the 7th night, the night he vanished, was no coincidence. And as Sarah pulled into the empty, dark stretch of Pierfield Industrial Road, her headlights cut across the old rusted warehouse doors. She stepped out, the cold wind slicing across her face. But the moment she approached the entrance, she froze. The warehouse door wasn't just open. It was swinging slowly, back and forth, like someone had been there only moments before. And inside the darkness, a voice echoed faintly. "Detective Nolan, we've been expecting you." The warehouse swallowed sound. Detective Sarah Nolan felt the cold concrete beneath her shoes and the thick black air pressing against her lungs. The voice that drifted out from the darkness wasn't loud, but it was confident, far too calm for someone who had just watched police lights sweep into the district. "Detective Nolan, we've been expecting you." Sarah's fingers tightened around her flashlight, her other hand hovering inches from her firearm. "Come out where I can see you," she said, her voice steady. A figure stepped into the faint stream of light leaking from the warehouse roof. Not a criminal. Not a shadowy stranger. It was Michael Harlow, the chief compliance officer from Ethan's firm, a man Sarah had interviewed twice earlier that year on a different case. A man who always seemed to know more than he should. "Detective," he said, giving her a small, eerie smile. "You're early." Sarah raised her light toward him. "Where is Ethan?" Michael sighed almost theatrically. Always straight to business. No curiosity about why he was here in the first place. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Where is he?" Instead of answering, Michael gestured for her to follow. "If you want the truth, you're going to have to walk with me." He began moving deeper into the warehouse. Against every instinct screaming danger, Sarah stepped forward. As she followed him past metal shelving and abandoned machinery, she noticed fresh footprints in the dust. More than one pair. Ethan had been here, and recently. Michael stopped at a small office room in the back corner. The door was open, and the inside glowed with a single flickering bulb. On the floor lay a stack of shredded documents, a smashed laptop, and a small lockbox that had been forced open. Sarah's heart thudded. He was destroying evidence. Michael smirked. "Not destroying. Hiding. Ethan found something he wasn't supposed to. Something I assume you've already started piecing together." Sarah kept silent, letting him talk. Michael walked to the corner of the room and held up a thin manila folder. "Ethan uncovered an offshore pipeline. Fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, all orchestrated by someone much higher up than me." Sarah's pulse quickened. "You were coercing him." Michael shook his head. "No." Someone else was. Someone who trusted him because they raised him. Sarah froze. The voicemail. The secret calls. Home. You're saying it was a family member, she whispered. Michael didn't answer directly. Instead, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Ethan was loyal. Too loyal. And loyalty is dangerous when you finally see the truth. Sarah felt the room tilt. Who was he trying to protect? Michael studied her face with a mixture of pity and cold amusement. Detective, you're standing inside the answer. Before she could react, a gun clicked behind her. Sarah turned sharply only to see Lena Reeves, Ethan's sister, standing in the doorway. Her hands trembled around the weapon, but her eyes were steady. Lena, Sarah whispered, stunned. Lena stepped forward. He wasn't supposed to go to the police, detective. He promised me he wouldn't. Sarah took a small breath. Ethan called you. Home was you. Lena nodded. It had always been me. After our parents died, we agreed we would trust no one but each other. But Ethan broke that rule the minute he called you. A harsh truth snapped into place. You were the one threatening him, Sarah whispered. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I had to. He was going to expose everything. Our family name. Our protection. Everything they left behind. He didn't understand that if he talked, I'd lose everything. We'd both lose everything. Sarah's stomach dropped. So you forced him to the warehouse? Lena shook her head. I tried to stop him. I tried to take his evidence. But he ran. He always ran when he was scared. And tonight, he ran too far. Sarah felt the weight of the room suffocating her. Where is he now? Lena didn't answer. Michael stepped forward, tone almost gentle. Detective, you're looking for a man who made a choice. A tragic one. Sarah's heartbeat slammed against her ribs. Where is he? Lena lowered the gun, hands shaking violently. Behind the warehouse, she whispered. Near the loading docks. I didn't mean for it to happen. He tripped, he hit his head, he stopped moving. Her voice broke. Sarah didn't wait for another word. She sprinted out of the warehouse, the cold night air cutting into her lungs. She ran along the rusted siding, turned a corner, and stopped. There, lying beside the loading dock, was Ethan Reeves. Still. Silent. Eyes open to the night sky. The bruising on his temple told the entire story. Sarah knelt beside him, her chest tight with a grief she didn't expect to feel. A man who tried to do the right thing. A sister who thought she was saving him. A conspiracy that ate both of them alive. As officers flooded the scene and Lena was taken into custody, Sarah stepped back, staring at the body of the man who left one final message. If something happens to me, don't trust. But the voicemail had cut off. Or had it? Avery called her minutes later from the lab. Detective, we enhanced the recording. That last word wasn't cut. It was whispered. Sarah's voice was barely audible. What did he say? Avery hesitated, then spoke. He said, don't trust her. Sarah closed her eyes. The truth was never about the caller. It was about the family Ethan had spent his whole life protecting. The one person he trusted most, the one person he shouldn't have. As the coroner's van drove away, Sarah looked up at the flickering warehouse lights. If this story shook you, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe because the darkness doesn't stop here.